Okay, we're just going to share this on social media, on Facebook, and we will be good to go. Give us a moment here. Good to see everyone. Good morning in Australia. TJ, very nice. Live from Australia. Good night, Nahara. Okay. People still waiting to get in. Baruch Hashem, quite a crowd. Make sure everyone's muted. We are live on YouTube, live on Facebook, live on Zoom. Baruch Hashem, we're live on all the various platforms. Make sure everyone's muted. Mute. Okay. Very good. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Parshas Vayeshev. For those that don't know, it's my bar mitzvah parsha. It's the parsha that I read the entire parsha for my bar mitzvah. The year that I turned 13, it wasn't Vayishlach, but Vayeshev. But before I begin, now that we have a crowd here tonight, for those of you that don't know, we are in the middle of our year-end fundraising campaign to raise $150,000 for the Chabad House. And anyone that knows me knows that I don't shy away from saying what we need. We are now with a little under 26 hours left, and we are already we are a third of the way there. We've raised the $50,000, almost $51,000. Oh, someone's got to mute themselves. Okay. Got to teach everyone how to use the mute button. It's a phenomenal concept. But we're going on 26 hours, a little less than 26 hours left, and we need to raise another $50,000, which will equal $100,000. So think big. I learned a letter from the Rebbe just yesterday with my Chavrusa, Daniel. I learned a letter from the Rebbe. The guy wrote to the Rebbe that he's struggling with financial challenges with Parnasa, with making a living, right? And the Rebbe responds to him that you should give more tzedakah than you ever gave before. So you're waiting to see, like, that's so counterintuitive. How does that work? And the Rebbe says it's simple. If you give more tzedakah, then Hashem sees you really, really want to give tzedakah, but you don't have the money to give more. So he'll give you more money because now he can trust that you're going to give it to tzedakah. So I want you, when we're done class tonight, I want you to go on the link. It's in the chat box. It's in your emails, in your Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I put it everywhere. And help us get to our goal of $150,000. If you want to know the link, please message me and I'll be happy to share it with you. And I'd like to thank all those that have already contributed and partnered with us to be a bright light in the great state of Montana. It is a wild night out there here in Montana. The snow is gesetzt. I was driving over here and it's probably a foot of snow on Ellis Street near the shul, a fresh powder. You can go skiing on Ellis Street. But I'm glad that I made it. I'm glad to see you all here. And what I'm going to share with you tonight is directly from a talk that the Rebbe gave on the third night of Chanukah at the end of 1953. So late December of 1953, the Rebbe addressed the crowd on the third night of Chanukah. And even though we are not at Chanukah yet, we still have four nights until Chanukah. But we're getting into the spirit of Chanukah, and it's an important lecture to have as we go into to be prepped psychologically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually for the holiday of Chanukah. And really, Chanukah and education are interconnected very, very strongly. And not to sideline the parsha by any means, but in Parshas Vayeshev, we read about 11 of the tribes of Israel. So the 10 brothers who are going to sell their brother Yosef, they're going to try to kill him, or yet better yet, they're going to try to murder him. Then they stick him in a pit. Then he's sold to Ishmaelites, and who are sold to Midianites, and eventually sold to the Egyptians. And he has a parsha with Potiphar's wife. It's a wild story about what youth are capable of doing. Even righteous youth are capable of doing. And even with all the holy justifications, it's a story of the human condition, and it's a story of human challenges, and therefore it's really directly connected to the idea of Chanukah, which is very much about education. And when it comes to Chanukah, there are two there's a dichotomy. On the one hand, it says in some holy books like the Maharsha, which is a great commentator on the Talmud and the Tractate of Shabbos, that Chanukah, the word Chanukah, comes from the word chinuch. In Hebrew, education is chinuch. Chanukah is the same foundational letters for the word chinuch. And what it says is that because in the temple days, right? Because in the temple days there was Chanukah's Hamizbeach and Chanukah's Beis Hamikdash, there was the inauguration of the temple and the inauguration or the re-inauguration, the rededication of the temple and rededication of the altar, right? It was you were starting from scratch, right? Everything was defiled, everything was made impure, everything was broken, and now you had to start from scratch. The word for rededication or the word for inauguration is chinuch or Chanukah. Because when it comes to education, you're starting from scratch. That's what education is. You're taking someone who doesn't know something and you're educating them. So it's very similar in concept to the Chanukah Hamizbeach, the dedication or rededication of the temple and the altar, because you're starting something from new, which is what education really is about. But the second aspect of Chanukah is the miracle of Chanukah. That they found a pure jug, a jug of pure oil that was sealed with the seal of the high priest. And even though, according to Jewish law, they could have, I don't know how many of you know this, that according to Jewish law, they could have kindled the menorah with impure oil. Because there's a rule in halacha, there's a rule in Judaism, that when the majority of the Jewish people are impure, then it's permitted to serve in the temple impure, because it's a majority have taken over. And being that in this case, right, all the oil was made impure, they could have legally, from a halachic standpoint, they could have taken the oil and used it to light the menorah. And yet, God made a miracle to show his love and his appreciation and how much he endears the Jewish people, how much he adores them, that Hashem made a miracle so they shouldn't have to use impure oil, even though it was permitted. And they didn't even start the mitzvah with impure oil. The entirety of the mitzvah from beginning to end was done in the most perfect way possible, without any permissibilities, without any loopholes, without anything. They did it from A to Z properly. So the one hand is the rededication of the temple, which is all about starting from scratch. And yet when you're starting from scratch, you'd think there'd be some leniency, some relaxation. Let's go into this slowly. And, you give it your best shot. But if it has to be impure oil in the beginning, it's okay. But no, God made a miracle that it should be pure oil from beginning to end without using any loopholes and any leniencies within the system. So really the correlation here, or the juxtaposition of these two ideas, is that when it comes to education, loopholes and leniencies, when it comes to Jewish education, are something we should stay very, very far away from. And this really goes against the modern American, and I don't mean modern of 2022, I mean modern since the 30s, since the 40s. The modern American Jew says that the way you educate a child today is, chill. Take a chill pill. Don't be so extreme. Give it to them, little tidbits. Give them a little, let them nosh on Judaism a little bit. Make sure when it comes to Shakespeare, and make sure when it comes to science, and make sure when it comes to American history and English literature, God forbid they should not miss one iota of information. Talmud, Torah, Halacha, Hasidus, don't be such an extremist. Comes along the story of Chanukah and says, no, you got to start off in the beginning in the educational years when you're rededicating a temple. And every Jewish child, both boy and girl, is a miniature temple. You have to give them the authentic, traditional dose of Judaism in all its glory. If someone said, you need an antibiotic, but the dose you're supposed to take is 1 milligram twice a day, you don't have to do that really. Why don't you take 1/4 of a milligram, 1/3 of a milligram once a week? you'd say to him, are you crazy? What do you mean? You went to the doctor, he gave you a prescription, but what are you playing games with the medication? So why, when it comes to Jewish education, when you're giving a child the foundation of how they should view the world and how they should interact with God and how they should interact with their soul and how they should interact with their parents and their siblings and their God, why over there would you ever, God forbid, minimize the incredible impact that a healthy, wholesome Jewish education would give them? Right? King Solomon says famously in Proverbs, in Mishlei, that if you educate a child according to his particular needs, according to his particular path and way of learning, even when the child gets older, it will never leave them. That whatever the education was as a child will stick with them, right? You're going to see a guy at 50 years old walking down the street and you're going to say, listen, there's a war breaking out. I want to teach you how to go to war, like they're trying to do in Russia and Ukraine. Doesn't work. The people have never been trained. They never got training for this. You want them to go to war? They have no idea what they're doing. Yeah, you'll try to train them for 6 minutes and think that that's how you can go to war. That's impossible. It's never going to succeed. But someone that's been trained from the age of 1, 2, and 3, from the youngest of ages, 6, you've trained them to be ready to deal with war. They'll be expert warriors. When you train a child from a very young age that when they encounter a challenge related to their Judaism, they have the strong foundation to deal with it and overcome what seems like an insurmountable challenge. If they don't get the education as a child and the training for how to deal with it, there's no way they're going to survive it. And that's why our sages, the great sages of Israel, made such an emphasis and they put in so much effort and energy that the education of Jewish boys and girls should be at the highest level, not watered down, diluted, half dose of the prescription. Because details matter. The mentality that's embedded in our core at a young age matters. Sometimes that's negative, right? If you bet something negative in a child, it will last with them too. When the Hamas terrorists take 4-year-old children and brainwash them to be suicide bombers, that's a terrible way to misuse education. It's authentic, but it's misused. But if you take that same education and you recognize that this is an incredible opportunity to embed and permeate this child and imbue this child with an incredible worldview that will be unbeatable and will be able to protect them and guide them throughout their future. That's the story of Chanukah. How do you dedicate the altar and the temple? You do it from day one with pure oil, even though there would be room to say maybe you could use some impure oil. It's not a good idea. Rabbi Wilhelm last night, our great speaker that we had for the Farbrengen V'Yutas Kislev, talked about this a little bit, about his uncle from Zhytomyr. His uncle is a rabbi in Western Ukraine in Zhytomyr. And when he had to finally leave his community, which he built an empire of Jewish life, an orphanage for children and yeshivas and schools and boys' schools and girls' schools and soup kitchens and synagogue, whatever you want. He had an empire of Jewish life. And he was the last one to leave, besides for the adult males who are not allowed, the conscripted males who can't leave Ukraine. He left after everyone else, and he took the orphanage to Israel. But with a lot of tears, he said, the same God, basically, who sent me to Ukraine, is now telling me it's time to leave. And I'm going to do it with the same joy that I did it when I went there. I'm going to leave with joy. It wasn't easy. But you're able to live that way if it's been implanted in your brain and it's something you worked on internally from a very young age. You can't just wake up one day and have that type of perspective if you never got the education, right? The famous an analogy to the Torah in the book of Deuteronomy, the Torah says, Ki ha'adam eitz hasada, because a person's like a tree of the field. What do you mean a person like the tree of the field? What happens with a tree? If you go over to a tree, a big redwood, and you take off a piece of bark, or you scratch it, is it going to be affected? No. I mean, it doesn't look nice, but the tree's going to be okay. Actually, it survives most storms. It survives most tornadoes. It survives most hurricanes. It survives a lot. It survives California. It's okay. We in Montana make fun of California a lot. It's nothing personal. But if you took that tree when it was a young tree that was just planted and you started scratching with it at the root, that tree would never become the incredible tree that you hope it would. Why? Because you're dealing with a reality of negatively affecting it, right? when it's still so susceptible to damage or to enhancement. We make a choice every day when you're dealing with education. Am I going to enhance this child's education? Or am I going to damage this child? And it's a tough position to be in as a parent, as a grandparent, as an educator, as a human being. I mean, no parent, myself included, wants to be in a position to know that every time you raise your voice, it can have a negative effect long-term on your child. Every time you give your child a consequence because it makes you feel good, that it actually can have a negative effect, right? There's a lot of ways. Parenting is a tough gig. Education is a tough gig. Mick, you always say that. But education is either the greatest thing or the worst thing. Either it enhances the child like a tree, the incredible heights, and it turns into the most beautiful redwood, or you ruined it at youth, and it's never going to turn into much. And so Chanukah comes along and teaches us it's not good enough to rededicate the temple with impure oil, even if you have good intentions, and even if it's permitted, and even if it's in the Jewish culture, even if you ate bagels and lox while you did it, it doesn't make it Jewish. That's not education. That's just a cultural baba mice. Education is about imbuing and permeating the soul of a child with the authenticity and beauty and light that exists within Judaism, unadulterated, no dilution. Because if you give them the whole dose, not only will it not turn them off, it will uplift them to a place that you never thought they can go. And the truth is, it also helps, and this is interesting, the Rebbe said this in 1953, that it also helps with midlife crisis. He didn't use those words. He said when you're in your 40s, right? He says when you're halfway through your life. Let me just double check. I don't want to misuse the Rebbe's words. He said, you've gone through half of your journey in this world, right? Because King David says in Psalm, the life of a person is 70, and if you're lucky, 80. Right? It's before they gave Americans all the preservatives that keep us alive longer. Right? Why did Mike Chait used to say, why Americans live so long? Our friend Mike Chait, because we eat so many things with preservatives. Our bodies are being preserved. But the Rebbe said you've gone through half of your life already. So when you have a midlife crisis, how do you survive a midlife crisis? It all depends on what your education was. If your education was strong and authentic and foundational and principled, then when you have your midlife crisis, what happens? So you have a year of struggle, the Rebbe says, but then you figure your way back to being who you are at your core because you had the education. But if you end up having midlife crisis when you're 15, that's a problem. That means the education was never there in the first place, and you'll never know how to krich out of it, how to crawl out of it when it comes later, because you're dealing with a much more challenging reality. Right? They always say about children, right? And correct me, there's some doctors in the class, but if a child breaks a bone and you cast them, it heals a lot better and quicker than an adult. Why? Because they're still young, mush, and you can still, So when you're dealing with a young child with education, and you say, it's really important for my child to go to the cat Grizz game on Shabbos. Because how could you live without watching the Cats and the Grizz playing football on Shabbos? So all our friends are going. So the easy thing to do is take them to the football game. The right thing to do for their education is to imbue in them, not you can't go to the football game because we're Jews and we keep Shabbos. That's a miserable way to educate them. Oh my gosh. It sounds like you really want to go to the football game. I get it. The football game is fun. Why don't we have fun in a Jewish way on Shabbos, the way Hashem wants us to have fun? Let's go play a game. You want to play Monopoly? You want to play ball? You want to read books? Let's uplift ourselves in an educational way, in a meaningful way, in a fun way, but never to get caught up in the inauthentic problems. And it's fascinating because in the Talmud, there's a famous concept called kechuta saira, which means like a strand of hair. A little strand of hair, right? You ever see, you go once on your beard like this, even without purpose, you get one hair in your hand. It's a hair, big deal. But the Talmud says you have to be careful with your Judaism, even if the item in Judaism is as simplistic or as seemingly unimportant as one strand of hair, you should be scrupulous about it. You should be super careful about it. Why? What if it's actually not something that's so important? Why do I have to be so scrupulous? Because that's the way life works, is that we end up breaking ourselves on one little thing, and we don't know if that's an important aspect that's going to keep us strong later in life or derail us to the point where we forget who we are. And I wish I could sit here and tell you guys tonight that I haven't seen this 1,000 times with myself and with others, but I have. You say, I'm going to use myself. You know what? Why do I have to use anyone else? I'll use myself as an example. My body, Chaim Brook's body, was created by God in a way that when he puts carbs into his body, carbohydrates, it makes him gain weight and feel very unhappy with his body. It's just a fact. But then he says to himself, it's just one little carb. Just some delicious homemade gluten-free bread that Chavi made for the Fabrengen. Just one piece. But it's not really one piece. It's 2 or 3. And then there's a dessert that's also gluten-free. So why not have some of that? And you wake up 6 hours later, you have no idea how you got there. Why? Because you weren't being midaktik ichut hasaira. You weren't being super careful when it came to something that seems just a little something. And before you knew it, you were taken on a ride that you forgot how you got there in the first place. And let's face it, the Rebbe says, and I love the fact that in 1953, you know what that means? It's almost 30 years before I was born. The Rebbe is talking in a language that fits for today perfectly. The Rebbe says, you have to remember that the opposing forces to holiness, the forces that are trying to secularize our society and our children. Right? There's the whole debate if we want Americans to say happy holidays or Merry Xmas. I struggle with that. I don't know the right thing because on the one hand, I want people to be comfortable in their religion. I happen not to agree with their religion, but I want people to be comfortable to be in their religion. I don't want to say happy holidays. I want to say Chanukah. No happy holidays. We're going to happy holidays. Makes me crazy when I get Chanukah cards from Jewish people. It doesn't say happy Chanukah. It says happy holidays. What kind of? It's not holidays. It's one holiday. It's called Chanukah. So what's the plural? Is it for Purim also? I don't know what the holidays are. My point is that the forces that are trying to secularize humanity and take God out of the picture, you know, those people that make lawsuits against "In God We Trust" and lawsuits against the national anthem, not the national anthem, I'm blanking. Someone help me.
The nativity scenes in the public square.
No. What's the thing they say every morning? No, I'm blanking on the prayer that people say every
God bless America.
No.
Pledge of Allegiance.
The Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Everyone take a bow. Nick, thanks for saving the day. Right? The Pledge of Allegiance. They want to make thank you, Erica. She lives in Norway and she's writing on Facebook, Pledge. It's the Pledge of Allegiance. Good. At least someone in the world knows about our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Erica. The point is, they want to fight that. So those forces, says the Rebbe, of secularization, they don't care if they lose millions of dollars. They don't care if they lose people's lives. As long as they can get their ideology across, they're ready to do whatever it takes to create weird and wrong and ungodly thinking in humanity. Therefore, as Jews that want to stick to the values of Yiddishkeit and we want to educate our children in those values, there's no chachmas. You can't, like the Talmud says, kol hamachnes b'chavei chamachnef. Chanifa. You know what chanifa is? Chanifa is when you're trying to, like with a politician, right? You want to be on their good side. So you smear them, you stick around them, you make them feel good, you stay connected. It's fake, it's not authentic. But we do that to the forces of secularism because we're hoping that maybe if we're nice to the secularists, then they'll be nice to us. And they'll suddenly say, ooh, Yiddishkeit's amazing, maybe we should let you, it's Baba Mises. The Rebbe says for 30 years, Jews have been trying to do this in America, which means at 53, the Rebbe is saying this, The 43, 30, from the 20s, from the 1920s, Jews were coming from Europe and they were trying to impress the secularists. We're Jewish, but we're not so religious, we're a little religious. And what was the result of that? Their youth were toast. What about the Jews who came to America and said, we have standards and we're not breaking them. We love you, we'll treat you with respect and dignity, we'll be good neighbors, but our Yiddishkeit is not up for debate and the education of our children is going to be authentic and pure, like the oil on Chanukah, pure, unadulterated oil. Their children, at least a big chunk of them, remain very much connected. You don't have to, Rabbi, you can't just trim your beard. You don't have to shave it, but to trim it. You don't think you'd look better? When you go to the barber, you just ask him to make it the corners a little nicer? No, God said no, so I say no. Would it be more convenient? Honestly, I don't know. I never tried. But even if I would agree with you that it'd be more convenient, the minute you break that boundary, you don't know where it's going to go. And the reality is that I'm pretty sure that Kanye West doesn't like the Jews that are secular more than he doesn't like the religious ones. Meaning it doesn't help with those that are trying to either hurt us or brainwash us or secularize us. It doesn't change anything from their perspective. They look down at us no matter what. So it doesn't really help to break the boundaries that are so fascinating and so powerful for the purity that we seek. And so with Chanukah coming, and that's why, by the way, in Chanukah, there's such a focus on children. Chanukah is not a children's holiday. Hanukkah is a holiday for everyone. So it's not a kiddie holiday. I know for some reason in America, they think Hanukkah and Purim are for kids. They're for kids too. But on Hanukkah, we have an emphasis on playing dreidel with children, giving Hanukkah gelt to children. By the way, in America, we became this thing, we give kids Hanukkah presents. That's not a Jewish thing. Hanukkah gelt, giving money and then going with your kids to buy whatever they want with it and then teaching them how to take 10% of that and giving it to tzedakah. That's what Hanukkah gelt's about. But why are the children so involved? Because the whole story of Hanukkah is reminding us at its core that Chanukah, that chinuch, that rededication or dedication of a child or inaugurating a child into Jewish life should not be done half-baked, should not be done with half the dose because you think you're smarter than the pharmacist. It should be done exactly as prescribed by God, because when we do that, you know what happens? Hashem says, you're worthy of miracles. You guys showed me, right? What did the Jews do back then? They could have immediately said, we're not going to search for oil. Whatever oil we have, even if it's impure, we're going to light the menorah. But they kept searching and searching and searching for pure oil. What did God do? Oh, they didn't give up on me. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give them pure oil, and I'm going to make it miraculous. When we show Hashem that we are capable of remaining connected and that we are capable of sticking to the values that God has given us, and we're ready to fight for it. I debate with my children all the time. Why can I eat this food? Abba, why can I eat this? It says it's kosher. I said, yeah, but it's not Chol Yisrael. And we want our souls to be as spiritually pure as possible, so we're extra careful to keep Chol Yisrael. But Abba, why? Abba, I try to do it with gentility, as gentle as a New York bombastic rabbi can be. I try to do it with sensitivity to understand why they would want it, considering that their friends all have it. But at the end of the day, if we break the boundaries, if we say that this part of Yiddishkeit is not so important, then Hashem says, who am I making a miracle for? They don't even really care. Let them live. They want to live a mediocre Jewish life. Have at it. See if it works. But if you show Hashem that you're ready to fight for not a mediocre Jewish life, but a fantastic, alive, enthusiastic, exciting Jewish life, and Hashem says, oh, these guys need some miracles. Let's give them some miracles. So ladies and gentlemen, before I leave you tonight, we are now on the campaign at 35%. We are at $53,110. I'd love to go to sleep tonight knowing that we reached 50%, which is 75,000. So we need 27,000, which really means we need $12,000. And $12,000, I can go to sleep tonight knowing we're already 50. And we're really, even in the last half hour, another $3,000 came in. We have 25 hours and 37 minutes left. So if you haven't been part of this miracle, if you want to join the Montana miracle, what do you mean if you want? Of course you want to. So we have our regular donors that keep the Chabad house open all year round. Without them, this place wouldn't even exist. We have donors that help with projects. We have so many different things going on, but once a year we make a public campaign to raise the funds so that there's some breathing room, so that more Jews can get involved. We can reach out to more and more Jews quantitatively and qualitatively. And the more tzedakah, I didn't choose to read this letter yesterday. I'm reading the book with letters of the Rebbe with my chavrusa, with my partner Daniel, in order of the way it just happened to be yesterday. The letter was about a guy complaining about finances. And he was asking about what he should do. And the Rebbe's response to him when he was complaining about Parnasa, right, interest rates and mortgage payments, and the Rebbe's response was, you need to give more tzedakah, because then Hashem says, oh, it's a trustworthy custodian for the tzedakah. Then I can give him more, because then he'll give more tzedakah. The person says, oh, yeah, I can't give tzedakah. Hashem says, I should give him more. What's he going to do? Keep more for him? So he's complaining the whole day. He's going to sit and complain. That's not a good representative. And so I need you people to dig deep so that we can partner together and keep rocking and rolling for Yiddishkeit. The website is charity with a D, CHARIDY.com, charity.com/Montana Miracle. And let's make miracles together. If one of you, maybe Erica, if you can write in the chat box on Facebook the link to the website, to the donation page, that would be moiradik. And to the rest of you, have a moiradik evening, have a fantastic evening, a freilich and Chanukah. There will be some changes in our weekly schedule. There will be time that I will be spending with my family to celebrate Chanukah, just with my family, and that does exclude all of you. I love you guys dearly, but there's a time that every father needs to spend time with their children, and every husband needs to spend time with their wife, and I'm going to do that while you guys are watching all the menorahs lit. So I may be out for a week or two, but I'll be back. Not like the rest of those people told you they'll be back. I'll really be back, God willing. Sei gesund, Chanukah, and go. Oh, I put a link also here for those of you that are on Zoom. There's a link to the campaign also on Zoom. You guys can do it, by the way. You know that inheritance that your grandfather left you. You never knew what to do with it for $20,000. You go now and put it right on the Chabad House page. What are you going to lose? Hashem's going to say, "Wallah, I can give them 50,000 because they gave 20,000. They're trustworthy." Okay, I'm done. Sei gesund. I'll see you back here later. Have a wonderful evening. A freilich and Chanukah. Rock and roll.